South China Sea is a region of immense strategic and economic importance, harboring vast hydrocarbon reserves that could reshape energy dynamics in Southeast Asia. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the region contains an estimated 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas and 11 billion barrels of oil in probable reserves, with undiscovered reserves projected at an additional 160 trillion cubic feet of gas and 12 billion barrels of oil. These resources are primarily located along the sea's margins, with key areas like Reed Bank holding approximately 5 billion barrels of oil and 55 trillion cubic feet of gas. While countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia are advancing energy exploration projects in contested waters, the Philippines has been slower to capitalize on its resource potential due to a 2014 policy suspending exploration in disputed areas. However, with the Malampaya gas field nearing depletion, the Philippines is now ramping up efforts to revitalize its oil and gas sector through projects like redeveloping the Cadlao oil field and pursuing joint exploration ventures, signaling a renewed commitment to addressing energy security and rising costs.
As we renew Service Contract 38, we optimistically look forward to the continued production and utilization of the remaining reserves of the Malampaya gas field, as well as further exploration and development of its untapped potential.
The Philippines faces significant challenges in harnessing its vast hydrocarbon resources, primarily due to Chinese aggression in disputed waters. Despite a 2016 arbitral tribunal ruling under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, affirming the Philippines' exclusive rights within its exclusive economic zone, EEZ, and invalidating China's historic rights claims under the 9-dash line, enforcement remains problematic as China refuses to recognize the decision. Confrontations such as maritime harassment in Reed Bank exemplify the difficulties in asserting sovereign rights over these critical resources. Nonetheless, the Philippines is taking steps to safeguard its maritime sovereignty and unlock its estimated $263 trillion worth of untapped hydrocarbon reserves. Initiatives include renewing the Malampaya service contract and attracting investments in fields like the Sulu Sea and Cotabato Basin. Coupled with proposals for joint patrols with the U.S. and stronger naval coordination, these actions underline the Philippines' intention to secure its energy future. As the West Philippine Sea represents both the nation's sovereignty and economic potential, the international community's support in upholding the 2016 ruling and promoting peaceful resolutions is vital for regional stability and the responsible development of these invaluable resources. The South China Sea stands as a pivotal region of paramount strategic and economic significance, primarily due to its abundant natural resources, notably vast reserves of oil and natural gas. Latest estimates from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, indicate that the South China Sea harbors approximately 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas and 11 billion barrels of oil within proven and probable reserves. Moreover, there are additional untapped resources comprising 160 trillion cubic feet of natural gas and 12 billion barrels of undiscovered oil within the region. Among the notable features in the South China Sea, the Reed Bank, also known as Recto Bank, emerges as a focal point with substantial potential for enhancing energy security in the Philippines. Estimates suggest that Reed Bank could potentially hold up to 5.4 billion barrels of oil and 55.1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Despite being situated within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, EEZ, Reed Bank is subject to territorial disputes and overlapping claims, notably by China. The development of resources in the South China Sea, particularly at Reed Bank, carries significant economic implications for the Philippines. It has the potential to enhance the country's economy by providing a stable energy source and decreasing reliance on imports. This is especially crucial as the Malampaya gas field, currently supplying 20% of Luzon's electricity demand, is projected to be depleted by 2027. However, challenges and tensions persist in the region, impeding exploration and development efforts. Territorial disputes, notably with China, have hindered oil and gas surveys, with Chinese Coast Guard vessels posing obstacles to Philippine activities. Despite international rulings affirming the Philippines' rights over Reed Bank, China continues to assert its claims, leading to ongoing tensions. Recent developments have seen calls for the Philippines to resume exploration endeavors at Reed Bank to address escalating energy costs and the imminent depletion of existing gas fields. Proposals for joint patrols with the United States have emerged to ensure the safety and security of exploration activities in the region. The July 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague marked a significant moment in the long-standing dispute between the Philippines and China over the South China Sea. The tribunal's decision favored the Philippines, declaring that China's expansive claims within the 9-dash line held no legal basis under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. This verdict upheld the Philippines' exclusive economic rights in the region, while also condemning China's actions, including illegal fishing and the construction of artificial islands, as violations of the Philippines' sovereign rights. Despite the international legal ruling, China adamantly rejected the decision, labeling it as null and void. In defiance of the tribunal's judgment, China continued to exhibit assertive behavior in the South China Sea. Notably, the China Coast Guard, CCG, intensified its patrols around key features like Scarborough Shoal, Luconia Shoals, and Second Thomas Shoal, underlining China's persistence in asserting its sovereignty in the region. Moreover, China's interference in the Philippines' energy exploration activities, exemplified by incidents such as the harassment of Philippine supply ships near Second Thomas Shoal in 2023, has further added tensions between the two nations. Recent developments in the South China Sea have seen escalating geopolitical tensions as external powers, including the United States, have become more involved, adding complexity to the already contentious situation. In November 2024, a security agreement was signed between the United States and the Philippines, signaling a joint commitment to sharing classified information and presenting a unified front against China's maritime ambitions.
Pseudo-military vessels disguised as Coast Guard vessels and maritime militia vessels in the areas in the West Philippine Sea. They have been very aggressive in their information operations against the Philippines.
Against this backdrop, confrontations between Philippine and Chinese vessels have become more frequent, resulting in injuries and damages. The escalation reached a critical juncture when Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. enacted 2 landmark laws aimed at defining the country's maritime boundaries, further heightening tensions in the region. The impending depletion of the Malampaya gas field, a vital energy source supplying a substantial portion of Luzon's power needs in the Philippines, poses a looming energy crisis set to unfold by the first quarter of 2027. With the remaining reserves projected at 858.8 million standard cubic feet, the country faces the urgent need to diversify its energy portfolio to avert potential shortages and disruptions once the field is exhausted. In response to this challenge, the Philippines has decided to shift towards harnessing renewable indigenous sources to increase its energy security. Central to this initiative is the National Renewable Energy Program, NREP, designed to elevate the share of renewable energy in the country's power mix to 35% by 2030 and an ambitious 50% by 2040. Notably, the Philippines stands as the 3rd largest global producer of geothermal energy, leveraging this abundant resource with geothermal plants with an impressive 65 to 71% capacity factor, rendering them reliable baseload power providers. Exploration of potential energy reserves, exemplified by endeavors at the Reed Bank, emerges as a pivotal component of the Philippines' energy strategy. The Reed Bank is earmarked as a promising site for natural gas reserves, envisioned to play a crucial role in filling the void left by the Malampaya gas field's depletion. The Department of Energy, DOE, spearheads efforts to promote the exploration and development of indigenous energy sources, emphasizing the necessity of securing a stable and sustainable power supply for the nation's energy needs. Across the energy landscape, notable milestones and initiatives highlight the Philippines' commitment to energy diversification and sustainability. For instance, the Tiwi and Macban geothermal facilities, operated by AP Renewables Inc., collectively contribute 300 megawatts to the national grid. APRI's innovative strides include pioneering the country's first battery energy storage and geothermal hybrid system, enhancing grid stability and resilience. Furthermore, the NREP sets forth ambitious targets, aiming to achieve 15.3 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030, encompassing diverse sources such as hydropower, wind power, solar power, and biomass power. To fortify energy security, the DOE is actively pursuing the development of liquefied natural gas, LNG import terminals, complementing the country's renewable energy endeavors. This strategic move seeks to ensure a consistent supply of natural gas, consequently reducing dependency on imported fossil fuels and fortifying the Philippines' energy resilience in the face of evolving challenges. Amidst this critical juncture, the Philippines' concerted efforts towards renewable energy adoption and exploration activities stand as linchpins in shaping a sustainable and secure energy landscape for the nation's future. U.S. companies have proactively sought collaborative ventures with Philippine counterparts to delve into energy exploration endeavors within both contested and uncontested territories. A recent U.S. presidential trade mission to the Philippines witnessed a significant stride in this direction, with 12 out of 22 U.S. firms unveiling joint projects and partnerships with local entities. These initiatives span a spectrum of sectors, encompassing renewable energy projects, advancements in the digital economy, and infrastructural developments.
On this trip alone, these companies are announcing over $1 billion of U.S. investments.
Noteworthy among these engagements are Ultra-Safe Nuclear Corporation's collaboration with the Manila Electric Company, Meralco, to pioneer cutting-edge nuclear solutions, and Solgo's expansion of solar panel manufacturing capabilities in Lipa City. The strategic alliance between the United States and the Philippines has seen a notable reinforcement through joint military patrols and the revitalization of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, exemplifying the essence of these joint endeavors. Partnerships, such as Ultra-Safe Nuclear Corporation's collaboration with Meralco to advance nuclear battery solutions for clean energy, highlight the fusion of technological prowess towards sustainable energy goals. Similarly, Solgo's ambitious expansion plans in the solar energy sector within the Philippines, targeting a capacity of 15 megawatts by 2025, pinpoint the commitment to harnessing renewable resources for a greener future. Concurrently, ventures like Innovation Force's collaboration with Aboitiz Power signify an effort to foster innovation in the realm of clean energy solutions. Additionally, the joint air and maritime patrols strategically conducted in the South China Sea serve as visible manifestations of the collaborative resolve between the United States and the Philippines to deter provocative actions and uphold regional stability in the face of escalating tensions. Despite objections from China, countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia have persisted in their exploration endeavors within the South China Sea, resolutely advancing their efforts to tap into natural resources situated within their exclusive economic zones, EEZs. Malaysia, through its state-owned entity Petronas, stands out for its proactive gas exploration activities in the region, even in the face of direct pressures exerted by Chinese authorities. Concurrently, Vietnam has undertaken ambitious island-building initiatives in the Spratly Islands, a move that has triggered diplomatic protests from neighboring Malaysia, underlining the escalating competition for strategic resources in the region. In contrast to its regional counterparts, the Philippines finds itself grappling with policy hesitations and internal debates, impeding its progress in energy exploration within the South China Sea. Despite a staunch focus on diversifying energy sources and championing clean energy initiatives, the country's energy policy stance has inadvertently led to delays in crucial exploration activities. The Philippine Energy Plan, 2023 to 2050, sets forth ambitious targets aiming to carve out a 35% share for renewable energy in its power generation mix by 2030, ascending to 50% by 2050-2040. However, the confluence of geopolitical tensions and market price fluctuations has posed formidable challenges for the Philippines in securing stable energy supplies. Past incidents involving confrontations over drilling operations serve as stark reminders of the potential for future escalations within the region. Noteworthy instances include Chinese Coast Guard vessels encroaching on waters near Malaysia's Kasawari gas field in 2021, sparking diplomatic protests from Kuala Lumpur. Similarly, Indonesia has grappled with Chinese vessel intrusions near the Natuna Islands, prompting Jakarta to deploy warships in response. The South China Sea emerges as a cauldron of complex dynamics, where strategic economic interests, territorial sovereignty assertions, and environmental preservation imperatives intertwine to shape the geopolitical landscape. The Sulu Sea and Cotabato Basin stand out as regions brimming with substantial untapped potential for oil and gas exploration within the Philippines. The Philippine Department of Energy has identified the offshore Sulu Sea Basin as a reservoir holding an estimated potential of 203 million barrels of oil equivalent. Similarly, the Cotabato Basin boasts a potential of 159 million barrels of oil equivalent, with an existing discovery of 29 billion cubic feet (BCF) of gas. The strategic development of these resources holds the promise of propelling the Philippines into a position of net energy exporter, thereby reducing its reliance on imported fossil fuels and catalyzing economic growth across the nation. A pivotal energy asset for the Philippines, the Malampaya gas field situated off the coast of Palawan, has played a crucial role in the country's energy landscape. In a strategic move to sustain production and exploration activities within this vital field, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. inked a renewal agreement for the Malampaya Service Contract number 38 in May 2023. Originally slated to expire in February 2024, this 25-year production contract has been extended for an additional 15 years, now stretching until 2038, February 2039. The extension encompasses a comprehensive work program featuring geological and geophysical studies alongside the drilling of a minimum of 2 deep-water wells during the initial subphase 1, spanning from 2024 to 2029. This initiative is poised to unlock the full potential harbored within both the existing gas field and the adjacent prospect areas, paving the way for sustained exploration and extraction activities in the region. China has consistently voiced its opposition to the deepening U.S.-Philippines military ties, citing concerns over regional destabilization. Chinese officials have vehemently criticized the increased American military presence in the Philippines, framing it as a component of a broader containment strategy aimed at China and interference in regional dynamics. The Chinese embassy in Manila has explicitly warned that such military collaboration will not only jeopardize Philippine national interests, but also imperil peace and stability within the region. In stark contrast, the Philippines has staunchly defended its decision to enhance defense cooperation with the United States, asserting that such partnerships are imperative for fortifying national security and safeguarding sovereignty. Anchored in the National Security Policy, NSP, 2023 to 2028, the Philippines emphasizes the paramount importance of upholding territorial integrity and augmenting defense capabilities. The government contends that the U.S. military presence plays a pivotal role in enabling more efficient responses to natural disasters and various security threats, aligning with the nation's strategic imperatives for safeguarding its borders and populace. Recent developments have further heightened tensions between China and the Philippines, particularly following the Philippines' consent in February 2023 to grant U.S. forces access to an additional 4 military bases under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA. This move elicited strong rebuke from China, which accused it to encircle and constrain China's influence. Despite the ensuing diplomatic friction, the Philippines maintains that the expansion of the EDCA sites is aimed at fostering local economic development and enhancing disaster response capabilities, underscoring the multifaceted objectives behind the strategic military arrangements. Under the EDCA framework, the U.S. now enjoys access to a total of 9 Philippine military bases, with plans in motion to transform these sites into hubs for humanitarian aid and disaster response operations. The National Security Policy, NSP, 2023 to 2028, serves as a guiding beacon delineating the strategic roadmap for for safeguarding national security interests and deepening defense collaborations, with allies such as the United States marking a pivotal component of the Philippines' overarching security apparatus in an era fraught with geopolitical complexities and regional power dynamics. With allies such as the United States marking a pivotal component of the Philippines' overarching security apparatus in an era fraught with geopolitical complexities and regional power dynamics. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague delivered a significant ruling on July 12, 2016, favoring the Philippines in its dispute against China over the South China Sea. The tribunal's decision unequivocally invalidated China's expansive claims, notably the contentious 9-dash line, citing that these claims lacked any legal grounding under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. Furthermore, the ruling deemed China's activities, such as island building and land reclamation, as unlawful, marking a pivotal moment in the legal landscape of maritime disputes in the region. Despite the resounding verdict, China has persistently maintained its claims across a vast expanse of the South China Sea. This assertion is signified by the construction of military installations on artificial islands and the continuous deployment of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels. Recent escalations include confrontations like the use of water cannons by Chinese Coast Guard ships against Philippine vessels near the Scarborough Shoal. Actions that were swiftly condemned by the G7 foreign ministers, who emphasized the absence of legal legitimacy backing China's territorial assertions. Amidst these tensions, the global community, including the Philippines, has advocated for unobstructed and peaceful exploration of natural resources within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The Philippines Armed Forces have pledged to safeguard such activities, demonstrating a commitment to ensuring the safety and security of resource exploration endeavors. Notably, efforts to facilitate joint oil exploration through a memorandum of understanding with China have encountered obstacles due to ongoing territorial disputes. Central to discussions on regional stability is the imperative of fostering peaceful and lawful exploration within the West Philippine Sea. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, has been actively engaged in formulating a code of conduct for the South China Sea, aimed at averting conflicts and upholding the primacy of international law. The Philippines has welcomed the G7's endorsement of a rules-based order in the broader Indo-Pacific region. Beyond the legal and geopolitical dimensions, the South China Sea remains a critical maritime conduit, facilitating the transit of over $3 trillion in annual shipborne commerce. The South China Sea, a region of immense strategic and economic importance, serves as a vital global shipping route, harbors rich natural resources, and sustains a diverse marine ecosystem. However, it has become a hotspot for territorial disputes, particularly between China and the Philippines. China's expansive claims under the 9-dash line encroach on the exclusive economic zones, EEZs, of several Southeast Asian nations, prompting provocative actions such as militarized artificial islands, extensive military drills, and confrontations involving its Coast Guard and fishing fleets. In response, the Philippines has pursued legal and legislative measures to assert its maritime rights, including a landmark 2016 ruling from the Permanent Court of Arbitration invalidating China's claims, along with the enactment of laws like the Maritime Zones Act. Additionally, the Philippines has strengthened alliances, notably with the United States, to safeguard its interests. Resolving tensions requires robust international collaboration, adherence to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and the active role of ASEAN in mediating disputes, complemented by global diplomatic efforts and freedom of navigation operations to uphold international norms and regional stability. Thank you for tuning into our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.
Last-minute deal tonight between the U.S. and Iran to stop the fighting, at least temporarily, after 38 days of joint U.S.-Israeli military operations against Iran.
last night, the world exhaled. At 6:32 in the evening, Eastern Time, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that he had agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran. No bombing, no civilization dying tonight. 2 weeks of quiet, brokered, of all things, by Pakistan. And within hours, Iran's foreign minister confirmed safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz would be permitted. For 2 weeks, via coordination with Iranian armed forces, oil prices fell, stock markets steadied, anchors smiled. But here is what I want you to understand today, and what almost no one in mainstream television is telling you plainly. This is not a resolution. This is an intermission. Hans Morgenthau, the father of modern realist theory, spent his life warning that nations pursue power not because they are malicious, but because the structure of the world gives them no other rational option. The United States and Iran are not settling a dispute. They are pausing one. And in that pause, in these 14 fragile days, the most important question in global economics is not being asked loudly enough. What happens to the 700 million people of East and Southeast Asia if this ceasefire collapses? What happens when oil crosses $150 a barrel? That is what we are going to answer today. Before we talk about economics, let us be honest about what was actually agreed last night. Iran did not agree to reopen the strait. It agreed to allow coordinated passage. Ships must coordinate with Iranian armed forces. Iran's Supreme National Security Council declared victory. It said its war objectives had been nearly all achieved. Its 10-point plan demands the withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the entire region, the end of the war on the resistance axis, meaning Hezbollah, the Houthis, the lifting of all sanctions, and compensation for war damage. Trump called it a workable basis. That is diplomatic language for, we haven't agreed on anything yet. Talks will begin in Islamabad on Friday.
Thank you, David. Ambassador Friedman.
Experts are already asking whether Israel, which launched fresh strikes on Iran as Trump was posting his ceasefire announcement, will abide by any of this. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, just days ago, threatened to deprive the United States and its allies of the region's oil and gas for years. So here is the scenario I want to wargame with you. Not the ceasefire. The collapse of the ceasefire. Because 2 weeks is not a long time. And if those talks fail, if Israel strikes again, if Trump's patience breaks, if Iran's hardliners reassert control, the strait closes again. And this time, the world's oil buffer will be smaller, the nerves more frayed, and the markets more primed for panic. That is when Brent crude crosses $150. And that is when Asia's most promising growth story ends. Let me give you the numbers cleanly, because this is where analysis separates itself from noise. Before this war began, Brent crude was trading at roughly $72 a barrel. As of this morning, it sits above $111. That is a 54% increase in under 6 weeks, steeper than during the 1990 Gulf War. The International Energy Agency has called this the greatest global energy security challenge in recorded history. The Strait of Hormuz, a waterway barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest, carries approximately 20% of all the world's oil every single day. Of every barrel that passes through it, 84% is bound for Asia. At $150 per barrel, which TD Securities and Goldman Sachs estimate is entirely possible if the strait closes again through late April, we are talking about an oil price more than double the pre-war level. Every $10 increase in crude costs energy importing nations an average of 0.25% of their GDP. For Southeast Asia, where countries import between 60 and 98% of their oil from the Gulf, the math is not just painful, it is existential. And these are nations with almost no armor. Japan holds 254 days of strategic reserves. South Korea has just activated a 100 trillion won stabilization fund. But the nations directly in the path of this storm, the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, have reserves measured not in months, but in days. Let's go country by country. And let me start where the damage is most nakedly visible. Robert Kaplan, in his masterwork Asia's Cauldron, described the Philippines as a nation whose geography, 7,641 islands, no inland buffer, no domestic energy base, makes it permanently exposed to the tides of great power competition. He could not have known how prophetic that would be in the spring of 2026. Here is the number that defines everything. 98%. 98% of all the crude oil the Philippines uses comes from the Middle East.
Meron na tayong supply of crude oil sufficient supply.
On March 24th, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. declared a state of national energy emergency, the first leader in the entire world to do so. Government offices moved to a 4-day work week. Air conditioning in public buildings was ordered to be kept no lower than 24 degrees. The Philippines rolled back its own environmental standards, authorizing fuels with sulfur content 10 times higher than the legal limit, simply to keep generators running. Cebu Pacific began cutting routes. The president himself said grounding planes entirely was a distinct possibility. All of this happened at $111 oil. The Philippines says it has supply through June 30th. That buffer is built on commercial inventories, not strategic reserves. It is thin enough to see through. Now imagine $150. At $150, the Philippines' import bill becomes mathematically impossible to subsidize. The peso collapses further. Inflation goes double-digit. Jeepneys stop running. Fishermen cannot afford fuel for their boats. Rice, transported by diesel trucks across those 7,641 islands, becomes unaffordable for the 22 million Filipinos already living in poverty. Mearsheimer wrote that geography is the most permanent fact in international relations. In peacetime, the Philippines' island geography was a beautiful story of diversification and resilience. At $150 oil, it becomes a trap with no exit. Indonesia was, entering 2026, one of the most compelling emerging market stories on Earth. Southeast Asia's largest economy, the fourth most populous nation on the planet, a Muslim-majority democracy that Joseph Nye would recognize as the very model of soft power, built not through coercion, but through the genuine attractiveness of its development path. Here is the paradox of Indonesia's position. It is an oil producer, and yet it imports more than a third of its crude, because its own production has been in structural decline for decades. And that imported crude comes through the strait. Indonesia currently holds roughly 21 days of fuel reserves. President Prabowo's government is already cutting $6 billion from its budget to absorb the shock. $6 billion redirected away from schools and infrastructure into the gaping wound of energy subsidies. But the deeper alarm is historical. The Council on Foreign Relations has reminded every analyst who covers Indonesia of a specific haunting fact. The 1998 uprising that ended Suharto's 30-year rule was triggered directly by a sharp rise in fuel prices. Jakarta has seen fuel price riots since. And now, after Eid, after the great annual migration of Indonesian workers returning from the cities to their home provinces, the government is expected to reduce subsidies. When those subsidies end, And when the price of a liter of petrol reflects anything close to the $150 global reality, Indonesia's streets will not stay quiet. This is what strategists call cascade failure, when stress in one system overloads the next. At $150 oil, Indonesia does not face a recession. It faces a polycrisis, energy, food, currency, and political stability collapsing in sequence. If the Philippines is the most vulnerable and Indonesia the most politically combustible, Japan and South Korea represent a different kind of tragedy. The tragedy of nations that did everything right and still cannot escape what they had no hand in starting. Japan imports 94% of its crude from the Middle East. In normal times, it is protected by extraordinary discipline, 254 days of strategic reserves, the largest buffer in Asia. Allies depend on credibility more than capability. Thomas Schelling. Japan will not collapse at $150. But here is what $150 does to Japan. It arrives precisely as Japan was finally emerging from its decades-long deflationary trap. Real wages were rising. Consumer confidence had returned. Prime Minister Ishiba's structural reforms were beginning to take hold. And now, in a single geopolitical event 6,000 kilometers away, a war Japan had no voice in starting and no power to stop. All of that forward momentum faces a brutal reversal. To make it worse, Washington has told Tokyo that the delivery of 400 Tomahawk missiles Japan had ordered will probably not be possible, delayed by the demands of the Iran conflict. Japan is being asked to bear the economic costs of an American war while simultaneously discovering that America cannot fulfill its arms commitments. South Korea is the most industrially exposed nation in all of Asia. It is simultaneously one of the world's great oil importers, one of its great oil refiners, and home to Samsung and SK Hynix, the two companies that manufacture virtually all of the high-bandwidth memory chips that power NVIDIA A1 processors. The energy shock to South Korea is not merely domestic. It is a knock-on disruption to the entire global AI supply chain. The markets have already spoken. The Kospi suffered its worst single-day crash since 2008. The Korean won has fallen to levels not seen since the global financial crisis. South Korea has imposed vehicle rotation systems not seen since the 1970s oil shocks. Fuel oil for container ships has risen 87% since the war began. At $150 oil, South Korea's semiconductor industry, the beating heart of the global technology economy, faces cost pressures that no normal business cycle could absorb. And this is not a normal business cycle. Taiwan is not Southeast Asia. But it is the single most consequential economy in this story. Because what happens to Taiwan's power supply happens to the world's semiconductors. And what happens to the world's semiconductors happens to every digital economy on Earth. In 2025, Taiwan generated 53% of its electricity from liquefied natural gas. More than half. Qatar, the world's largest LNG exporter, declared force majeure on all its contracts after Iran struck the Ras Laffan facility. LNG prices in Asia have risen by 140% as a result of that single strike. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, manufactures over 90% of the world's most advanced chips. Its fabs run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Power is the ability to affect others to obtain the outcomes you want. Joseph Nye. Any interruption to Taiwan's power does not just hurt Taiwan. It hits the entire global technology supply chain at its single most irreplaceable node. And there is a geopolitical layer beneath the economic one. A United States consumed in the Persian Gulf, its carrier groups in the Middle East, its attention divided, its arms deliveries to Tokyo delayed. Creates precisely the kind of strategic opening that China has historically exploited in the Western Pacific. Taiwan's energy vulnerability and its geopolitical vulnerability are, at $150 oil, beginning to converge. Kenneth Waltz called it systemic shock. When an external disruption is severe enough to alter not just the policies of nations, but the structural relationships between them. The 1973 oil embargo was a systemic shock. It created OPEC leverage. It broke Bretton Woods. It drove Japan toward nuclear energy and reshaped American foreign policy for a generation. What we are watching today is a systemic shock in real time. Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan was the most exciting growth story on Earth entering 2026. Vietnam was becoming the world's factory. The Philippines was building a digital economy. Indonesia was positioning itself as the leader of the global South. Japan and South Korea were finally escaping decades of stagnation. All of that forward momentum is now running directly into a wall made of oil. The WFP estimates that 45 million more people globally will suffer from acute hunger in 2026 as a direct result of this conflict. In Asia and the Pacific, food insecurity is projected to rise by 24%, the largest relative increase of any region on Earth. And here is the fact that no one wants to say out loud: China negotiated safe passage for its tankers through the strait. China has vast strategic reserves. China has positioned itself as the neutral party in this crisis. While American carrier groups are in the Persian Gulf, while American arms deliveries to Tokyo are delayed, while American allies in Asia are absorbing a price shock from a war they did not choose, China emerges from this conflict stronger relative to every American ally in the region. Not dramatically, not overnight, but it emerges stronger. The ceasefire is real. The relief is real. But 2 weeks is not peace. It is a pause between acts in a drama whose final scene has not been written. The Strait of Hormuz is 100 miles long and 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. On its shores, the fate of hundreds of millions of Asians is being decided by two men who have never visited a single one of their cities. Watch this space. Because the next 14 days may be the most consequential of the decade.
The Philippine government will ask for its oil supplies to be given safe passage by Iran through the Strait of Hormuz.
Ayon po kay Secretary Tess Lazaro ng DFA, makikipag-usap po siya sa ambassador ng Iran. Most probably po ay tomorrow. Kung hindi man po magkakaroon ng schedule tomorrow, by next week po.
There is a 34-kilometer stretch of water between the Iranian coast and the rocky shores of Oman that decides whether the lights stay on in Manila, whether gasoline reaches the jeepneys of Cebu, and whether the rice gets planted in the fields of Mindanao. The Strait of Hormuz has always been the jugular vein of the modern world. And right now, Iran has its hand around it. What happened on April 2nd, 2026, was not a minor diplomatic footnote. It was a window, brief, clarifying, and deeply revealing into the new grammar of power in the Indo-Pacific. The Philippines, a treaty ally of the United States, a nation that hosts American military bases and whose young men and women train alongside the Marines of Camp Pendleton, quietly called Tehran and asked to be recognized as something it has never formally been, a non-hostile state. And Tehran said yes.
Ayon po kay Secretary Teslasaro ng DFA, makikipag-usap po siya sa ambassador ng Iran. Most probably po ay tomorrow, kung hindi man po magkakaroon ng schedule tomorrow, by next week po.
That single phone call between Foreign Secretary Teresa Lazaro and Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi tells us more about the real architecture of power in Asia than a decade of think tank reports. To understand what Manila just did, you need to understand what happened on February 28, 2026. Following joint military strikes by the United States and Israel on Iran, strikes that included the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued warnings prohibiting vessel passage through the Strait of Hormuz, leading to an effective halt in shipping. Traffic.
فرماندهان و سربازان آمریکا فرار.
The economic shockwave was immediate and savage. Brent crude prices surpassed $100 per barrel on March 8th for the first time in 4 years, rising to a peak of $126 per barrel. Analysts began using language not heard since 1973. The closure has been described as the largest disruption to the energy supply since the 1970s energy crisis, and the largest in the history of the global oil market. This is not a regional inconvenience. The Strait's 2 unidirectional sea lanes facilitate the transit of around 20 million barrels of oil per day, representing roughly 20% of global seaborne oil trade. And it is not just oil. Up to 30% of internationally traded fertilizers normally transit the Strait of Hormuz. That means food prices too. That means harvest seasons. That means the calculus of hunger. For the Philippines, a nation of 115 million people perched at the western edge of the Pacific, the numbers were existential. The Philippines imports 98% of its crude oil from the Middle East, which is now engulfed in one of the world's most serious conflicts. When the strait closed, the Philippines didn't just face a fuel shortage, it faced a countdown to paralysis.
Magtipid yung mga tao, and we are hoping that that we can target at 50% savings on fuel and electricity. We are campaigning that with the government agencies as well as all the encouraging.
Energy Secretary Sharon Garin warned that the nation had, at the time, about 45 days of fuel supplies left. 45 days. That is not a policy problem. That is a survival problem.
Meron na tayong supply of crude oil, sufficient supply hanggang June 30. Pero patuloy pa rin ang ating paghahanap ng supply, patuloy pa rin ang ating pagsuporta sa ating mga commuter para naman mabawasan ang bigat ng epekto nitong nagkakagulo sa Middle East.
On March 24th, President Marcos declared that the Philippines is in a state of national energy emergency in order to address the impact of the Middle East conflict on the country's economy, transportation, and job security. Here is where Robert Kaplan's revenge of geography becomes mercilessly real. Look at a map. The Philippines sits roughly 6,000 kilometers from the Persian Gulf. It has no oil fields of consequence, no liquefied natural gas reserves sufficient for its needs, and no overland pipeline to anywhere. Its lifeline runs through the Malacca Strait, across the Indian Ocean, and through that 34-kilometer choke point in the Gulf. Washington controls the most powerful navy in human history. It has aircraft carriers in the Arabian Sea. And yet, and this is the central humiliation of the current moment, the U.S. has been unable to reopen the strait it helped shut down. Washington launched the strikes on Iran that triggered the blockade on February 28th. And a month-long U.S. military campaign to force the passage open has yet to restore normal shipping. The superpower that asked the Philippines to stand with it, to host its bases, to align against China in the South China Sea, that superpower could not guarantee Manila a single barrel of oil.
To 2021, and it asked what were the consequences of those sanctions, and we murdered 38.
John Mearsheimer has spent decades arguing that states, at their core, are self-help units in an anarchic international system. When survival is at stake, alliances bend. When the lights are going out, ideology retreats. What the Philippines did was not betrayal. It was the oldest instinct in statecraft: survival. Iran did not simply close the strait. It reinvented itself as a gatekeeper, and in doing so began redrawing the diplomatic map of the Indo-Pacific. On March 26th, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi announced that ships from China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan would be allowed to transit the strait. Malaysia and Thailand soon followed, joining friendly nations. Study that list carefully. It is not a list of ideological allies. It is a list of nations that Tehran has calculated are either neutral, useful, or insufficiently threatening to punish. It is a list that carves Asia into two categories: those who benefit from American security guarantees and those who can actually move oil. Commodities shipping through the Strait of Hormuz fell by 95% between March 1st and 26th, according to the maritime tracking platform Kepler. For the countries on the permitted list, this was an enormous strategic windfall. For the U.S. and its treaty allies, it was an object lesson in the limits of hard power when deployed without an exit strategy. The Philippines looked at that list and made a decision. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s directive, Philippine officials asked Tehran to formally designate the Philippines as a non-hostile country to ensure safe passage for Philippine-bound ships. Philippine flagged ships secured safe, toll-free passage through the strait following talks between Foreign Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro and Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Araghchi. Tehran's assurances aim to stabilize deliveries of oil and fertilizer to the Philippines. There is a human story underneath the geopolitics that the cable news channels tend to skip. The Philippines is the world's largest exporter of seafarers. Its sailors crew container ships from Rotterdam to Yokohama, tankers from Basra to Rotterdam, bulk carriers from Durban to Shanghai. The sea is not an abstraction for Filipino families. It is the father who sends money home, the brother who misses Christmas, the son who learns navigation so his family doesn't have to go hungry. The deal may expedite the repatriation of more than 20,000 Filipino seafarers stranded amid heightened regional tensions and shipping disruptions. "20,000 people, stuck in maritime limbo, in a war zone they had no hand in starting, caught between a great power conflict that their government had no voice in shaping. For President Marcos, this was not an abstract foreign policy calculation. It was a domestic political crisis with a human face. Every one of those stranded seafarers has a family, a congressman, a senator who answers to voters. When Secretary Lazaro picked up the phone and called Tehran, she was not just negotiating oil prices. She was trying to bring those men and women home.
In my new position as Secretary of Foreign Affairs, after all, the award is a cornerstone of Philippine maritime policy.
The Philippines is not alone in this calculus. Consider what happened in the weeks before Manila's deal. Iran has said that it also considers Japan and South Korea, Washington's two other treaty allies in Asia, to be non-hostile countries and would be ready to facilitate the safe passage of tankers bound for the two countries. America's three most important treaty allies in Asia, Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines all found themselves, within weeks of the crisis, separately negotiating with Iran rather than relying on U.S. military power to guarantee their energy supply. The pattern is not coincidental. It is structural. This is the core contradiction that has always haunted the American security architecture in Asia. Washington asks its allies to accept political and military risk on its behalf. But it cannot always deliver the economic security those allies need to remain viable partners. The U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty was designed to deter military aggression. It was never designed to guarantee fuel delivery through a waterway where the U.S. itself is the belligerent. The deal reflects a calculated effort by the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to distance the Philippines from the aggressive rhetoric associated with its long-standing defense ally, the United States. While Manila maintains strong security ties with Washington, officials have prioritized a pragmatic, independent foreign policy to protect the lives of thousands of Filipino seafarers working on international commercial routes. That last sentence is worth reading twice. A pragmatic, independent foreign policy. That is diplomatic language for a hard truth. When your patron's war threatens your survival, you find your own way out. The Philippines' deal with Iran will not end its alliance with the United States. Marcos is not pivoting to Tehran. The bases will stay. The joint patrols will continue. The South China Sea tensions remain the defining strategic challenge of Manila's foreign policy, and on that front, Washington remains indispensable.
409. You are within Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone. You are requested to provide the following.
But something has shifted, and it will not shift back. Every government in Southeast Asia watched Manila pick up that phone. Every chancellor and foreign minister from Kuala Lumpur to Jakarta noted that the first country to declare a national energy emergency was also a U.S. treaty ally, and that it solved its problem not through Washington, but around it. The geopolitical lesson being absorbed across the Indo-Pacific right now is not that America is weak. It is something more subtle and more durable, that American alliances guarantee certain things and not others. They guarantee military deterrence in specific scenarios. They do not guarantee energy security when the war is America's own making. They do not guarantee the safe return of your seafarers. They do not guarantee that the lights stay on. Asia runs on oil. It runs on fertilizer. It runs on the sea lanes that connect it to the Persian Gulf. Any power, any alliance that cannot guarantee the safety of those lanes will find its partners conducting their own diplomacy on the side. The Strait of Hormuz is 34 kilometers wide, but the strategic distance it has opened between Washington and its Asian allies may prove far harder to close. History will record that on April 2nd, 2026, the Philippines, a nation that has stood with the United States through Leyte Gulf, through the Cold War, through the South China Sea confrontations with Beijing, called the Islamic Republic of Iran and asked not to be treated as an enemy. And Iran said yes. That is not a failure of Philippine loyalty. It is a precise measurement of where American power actually ends and where Philippine survival begins. Geography, as always, had the final word. The sea does not care about alliances. It only cares about passage. If you found this analysis valuable, share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion.
Now, the Philippines. The
Philippines makes its first natural gas discovery in more than a decade. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. announced gas and condensate were found at a well near the existing Malampaya gas field off the coast of Palawan.
I am pleased to inform everyone that for the first time in over a decade, a significant natural gas discovery has been made. The discovered reservoir, called Malampaya East 1 or MAE-1, is located about 5 kilometers east of the existing Malampaya field.
The Philippines is running out of time and running short on energy. Demand keeps rising, electricity prices remain unstable, and dependence on imported fuel continues to grow. Yet beneath the waters off Palawan, the country may have found a lifeline that was hidden in plain sight. What if the answer to today's energy challenge has been there all along, just 5 kilometers offshore? Each year, the economy consumes more power than the last. Factories, data centers, growing cities, and millions of households all draw from a grid under increasing strain. Energy independence is no longer just a policy goal, it has become a strategic necessity tied directly to national strength and sovereignty.
This helps Malampaya's contribution and strengthens our domestic gas supply for many years to come. Initial testing showed that the well flowed at 60 million cubic feet per day. This indicates that the well has the potential to produce even more, confirming it is a high productivity resource comparable to the original Malampaya well.
On January 19, 2026, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. announced a discovery that could reshape the country's energy future. A major natural gas find at Malampaya East 1, or MAE-1. This was not a theory or a projection. The gas was already flowing, confirmed through testing beneath the seabed. MAE-1 sits just 5 kilometers east of the original Malampaya gas field, the same basin, the same geological system, but with new reserves. For more than 20 years, Malampaya powered up to 40% of Luzon's electricity before its natural decline began. As production fell, the clock started ticking. MAE-1 changes that timeline. This is the first major natural gas discovery in the Philippines in over a decade, arriving at a moment when global LNG imports are costly and coal dependence remains high. Engineers confirmed a high-quality, commercially viable gas reservoir, supported by condensate output. This is energy security that can be measured, planned, and used. The scale matters. MAE-1 has the potential to power millions of Filipino homes, reduce brownouts, stabilize prices, and lower exposure to global shocks. Every unit of gas produced at home means fewer imports, fewer tankers, and fewer vulnerabilities. Energy independence is built one molecule at a time. What makes the discovery even more significant is who made it possible. Filipino engineers and crews carried out the work, completing operations without accidents. This was not just energy found in Philippine waters, it was built through Philippine capability. Across Southeast Asia, countries are racing to secure gas supplies as the energy transition tightens markets. With MAE-1, the Philippines re-enters that race not as a buyer, but as a producer. The next decade will determine how affordable power remains, how competitive industries stay, and how stable the grid becomes. MAE-1 arrives just as that decisive window opens. 5 kilometers east of an aging giant, a new chapter has begun. This is not just an energy story. It is an economic story, a security story, and a sovereignty story. And it starts offshore. Off the western edge of the Philippines, beyond the well-known tourist coasts of Palawan, lies one of the country's most important energy assets. Hidden beneath the sea, the Malampaya gas field quietly powered the nation for years. It was never visible and rarely discussed, yet it played a central role in keeping the country running. Not on land, not in sight, but essential. Discovered in the 1990s and developed in the early 2000s, Malampaya became the Philippines' first and only large-scale domestic source of natural gas. For more than 20 years, gas flowed from the seabed through underwater pipelines to power plants in Luzon. This was energy produced within Philippine waters, supporting homes, businesses, and industries without relying on overseas fuel. At its peak, Malampaya supplied up to 40% of Luzon's electricity. Entire cities depended on it, factories operated, hospitals stayed powered, and homes remained lit because of one offshore field. When Luzon had stable electricity, Malampaya was often the reason. But gas fields naturally decline. After more than 2 decades of steady production, Malampaya began to slow as pressure dropped and output fell. The impact was felt across the power system, revealing how much the country depended on a single source. This raised a difficult question for policymakers. What comes after Malampaya? The wider energy picture made that question even more urgent. The Philippines remains one of Southeast Asia's most coal-dependent countries, relying heavily on imported fuel. This exposes the country to global price swings and supply disruptions, driving up electricity costs even when demand does not change. Each shipment of imported coal adds risk. Natural gas offers a practical alternative. It burns cleaner than coal, produces fewer pollutants, and helps balance the grid when renewable energy fluctuates. As Malampaya declined, LNG imports filled part of the gap, preventing shortages but increasing exposure to global markets. Imported gas can help in the short term, but it cannot deliver real energy independence. That is why attention returned to the waters off Palawan. Beneath the same seabed that once sustained Malampaya, new potential remained. This time, the need was clearer, the risks were higher, and the timing was critical. Just 5 kilometers east of the original Malampaya gas field sits Malampaya East 1, or MAE-1. It lies in the same offshore basin and geological system that powered the Philippines for decades. But it is a new reservoir with fresh potential. This discovery was not a stroke of luck. It was the result of careful study, experience, and a deliberate decision to return to ground that was already well understood. Early estimates show that MAE-1 holds about 98 billion cubic feet of natural gas, enough to generate roughly 14 billion kilowatt hours of electricity each year. That amount of power could supply around 5.7 million homes for a full year. These figures translate into real impact. Millions of households supported, and a meaningful boost to the national power supply from a single offshore well. The technical achievement behind MAE-1 is just as significant. The well was drilled in deep water off Palawan, under demanding conditions that required precision, strong safety standards, and experienced teams. Flow tests confirmed its strength, with initial output of around 60 million cubic feet of gas per day, showing that this is a solid, commercially viable discovery. The presence of condensate further improves the project's value and resilience. Strategically, MAE-1 arrives at the right time. As the original Malampaya field continues to decline, this new discovery helps extend domestic gas production, stabilizes supply, and reduces dependence on imports. It also offers environmental benefits, emitting fewer pollutants than coal while supporting reliable power generation. More than just a new well, MAE-1 represents continuity and choice, a reminder that the Philippines still has room to shape its own energy future. Energy security is not an abstract concept. It shows up in everyday life, on electricity bills, in factories that need steady power, and in hospitals where outages are not an option. Gas from MAE-1 helps stabilize gas-fired power plants, keeping electricity supply steady when demand rises. When fuel supply is reliable, power generation follows. That stability matters. In a world shaped by geopolitical tension and volatile fuel markets, predictability becomes a real advantage. Domestic gas shields the Philippines from sudden global price shocks and reduces the need for costly emergency imports. While MAE-1 does not eliminate risk, it shifts the balance in the country's favor by giving planners more control and flexibility. The economic impact extends beyond energy security. Projects like MAE-1 support jobs across a wide chain, from offshore drilling and marine transport to engineering, maintenance, ports, and logistics. These are not short-term opportunities. They create lasting skills, support local businesses, and strengthen industrial capacity. Revenue from domestic gas also stays within the country, flowing back through taxes, royalties, infrastructure spending, and reinvestment instead of being lost to imports. Reliable energy also delivers clear social benefits. Households experience fewer outages and more predictable power costs. Businesses gain the confidence to invest, expand, and retain jobs. Stable supply makes it easier to extend electricity to underserved and rural areas, supporting schools, clinics, and small enterprises. At its core, development still begins with access to dependable power. From an environmental standpoint, natural gas offers a practical step forward. It produces significantly less carbon dioxide than coal and helps lower emissions immediately, not just on paper. Gas also plays a key supporting role alongside renewables, stabilizing the grid when solar and wind output fluctuate. This balance allows cleaner energy to grow without undermining reliability. Finally, responsible extraction underpins the entire transition. The MAE-1 drilling campaign was completed without accidents, reflecting strong safety standards in a high-risk offshore environment. Strict environmental safeguards and monitoring were applied throughout the process, protecting sensitive ecosystems and ensuring long-term viability. In energy development, cutting corners rarely saves time or money. It almost always costs more in the end.
The next steps are the completion and testing of the Camago 3, followed by the drilling of the Pag-asa exploration well to pursue more potential gas resource.
Government and industry reaction to the MAE-1 discovery has been clear and aligned. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. described the find as a high productivity resource, highlighting both the technical success of the well and the fact that it was carried out under Filipino leadership without any accidents. Within the energy sector, momentum has followed quickly. Companies involved in the Malampaya project, including Prime Energy Resources Development, PNOC Exploration Corporation, and Prime Oil and Gas Inc., are preparing for expanded work under the Malampaya Phase 4 program. Follow-on wells and appraisal activities are intended to fully define the resource and move it efficiently into existing infrastructure. At the policy level, MAE-1 is likely to influence how the country plans its energy future. Stronger incentives for exploration, clearer gas market rules, and better coordination between fossil fuels and renewables are all back on the table. The discovery sends a clear signal. When success appears, policy adapts. MAE-1 demonstrates that the Philippines can still find energy, develop it responsibly, and use it strategically, reclaiming not just supply, but control over its own energy choices. Offshore energy development is never simple. Deepwater drilling pushes engineering to its limits, where extreme pressure, temperature, and depth leave little room for error. MAE-1 lies thousands of meters below the surface, in an environment where precision determines success and mistakes carry heavy consequences. The ocean does not compromise, and energy security depends on how well projects are executed, not on optimism alone. Every offshore well brings technical risk. Narrow drilling margins, high-pressure reservoirs, and complex subsea systems mean that a single misstep can delay timelines or erase hard-won gains. Deepwater projects are also expensive. Rigs, support vessels, and safety systems demand large investments, and delays quickly multiply costs. Discovering gas is only the first step. Developing it responsibly is the real challenge. Market forces add another layer of uncertainty. Global natural gas prices shift constantly, shaped by geopolitics, weather patterns, and competing demand from major markets. When prices fall too low, domestic projects struggle to remain viable. When prices rise too high, consumers bear the burden. Managing this balance between affordability and long-term supply is one of the hardest tests for energy planners. Infrastructure is equally critical. Gas must move efficiently from offshore wells to onshore facilities and into the power grid. Pipelines, processing plants, and grid readiness will determine how quickly MAE-1 becomes usable energy. Gas left underground has no value without a clear path to the grid. Environmental and regulatory risks cannot be ignored. The waters off Palawan are ecologically sensitive, requiring strict safeguards, continuous monitoring, and firm regulatory oversight. Permits, environmental assessments, and community engagement are not box-ticking exercises. They determine public trust and long-term viability. Sustainable energy development depends on getting these right every time, because speed without stewardship ultimately leads to failure. Malampaya East 1 is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. Development is expected to move forward in phases under the Malampaya Phase 4 drilling program, allowing progress to be measured, adjusted, and managed carefully. Energy transitions take time, and MAE-1 represents the first step in a longer journey, not a quick fix. Additional wells, including Camago 3 and Bagong Pagasa, are planned to confirm and expand the resource base. Each successful well reduces uncertainty and strengthens confidence in the field's long-term potential. As testing continues, timelines for tying new production into existing infrastructure become clearer. Phased development allows flexibility, helping limit risk while ensuring steady progress. Success at MAE-1 also changes how the broader Malampaya area is viewed. Geological confidence increases, and prospects once considered marginal are being reassessed. The basin is no longer seen as one in decline, but as one with renewed potential. One proven discovery can reshape how an entire block is evaluated. In the long term, MAE-1 fits into a broader energy strategy rather than competing with it. The goal is not to choose gas over renewables, but to sequence them properly. Domestic gas provides stability, while solar, wind, and energy storage continue to scale, supporting a cleaner grid without sudden disruptions or price shocks. By smoothing volatility and strengthening supply control, MAE-1 gives the Philippines greater leverage in planning its energy future. It brings more certainty, more resilience, and a shift from reactive decisions to proactive strategy. In a region competing fiercely for fuel and investment, the country gains something rare: time. Time to plan, time to invest, and time to transition on its own terms. MAE-1 may not solve every challenge, but it clearly changes the direction, replacing decline with balance and dependence with choice. The discovery at Malampaya East 1 marks a defining moment in the Philippines' energy story, unlocking new domestic resources that can reinforce energy security, underpin economic expansion, and support a more realistic transition toward cleaner power generation. While technical, market, and environmental challenges remain, the find highlights the value of coherent policy direction, close coordination between government and industry, and disciplined, responsible resource development. As the country looks ahead, the true measure of this discovery will lie in how effectively it is managed, ensuring that energy development proceeds with environmental care and delivers broad, equitable benefits to Filipino households, communities, and the national economy. If you found this analysis valuable, share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion.
The Pentagon has proposed to open a new fuel depot in southern Philippines by 2028. The Philippine military welcomes this development.
The greater risk to our security is the lack of a credible deterrence. These facilities will help allow the AFP to perform and to sustain its operations.
Imagine a warship, big, powerful, loaded with missiles. Now imagine it runs out of fuel 4,000 miles from the nearest gas station. That warship is not powerful anymore. It is a very expensive piece of floating metal. America knows this. China knows this. And that is exactly why what just happened in the Philippines matters more than any fighter jet or military exercise you have heard about this week. On March 31st, 2026, the United States Defense Logistics Agency quietly published a contractor solicitation. No press conference, no headlines, just a simple government notice looking for bids to build a fuel depot along the western coast of the Davao Gulf in Mindanao, Philippines. 977,000 barrels of capacity, 41 million gallons of naval and aviation fuel. Operational by April 2028. This is not routine. This is the United States drawing the final line in a fuel arc that stretches from Australia all the way to the edge of the South China Sea. And Davao, a city that most Americans cannot find on a map, is the keystone. If America's biggest weapon is not a missile, it's a fuel pump, then subscribe. Because this is the story nobody else is telling. Here is a fact that keeps American military planners awake at night. Hawaii, America's main Pacific hub, is 5,300 miles from the South China Sea. That is roughly the distance from London to New York. Twice. In a real conflict in the Western Pacific, American ships and aircraft would need fuel constantly. And getting that fuel from Hawaii to the fight would take days. Days that could decide the outcome of a war. Pentagon has a term for this problem. They call it the tyranny of distance. For decades, America's answer was one massive facility in Hawaii, the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. Built during World War II, buried in volcanic rock, it once held 250 million gallons. It was America's fuel vault for the entire Pacific. Then it leaked. In 2021, fuel from the aging facility contaminated the water supply of over 93,000 people on Oahu. Military families, civilians, children. People reported rashes, vomiting, neurological symptoms. The Navy initially resisted. Then the investigations began. Then the defueling orders came. By 2024, Red Hill was empty. America's great Pacific fuel reserve was gone. And Washington had to build something smarter. Something that could not be destroyed by a single Chinese missile strike. Military strategists call it distributed logistics. The idea is simple. Do not keep all your fuel in one place. Spread it across dozens of smaller depots. Each one is a harder target. Each one extends the reach of your forces. Together, they form a web that is nearly impossible to break. Since 2023, America has been building exactly that web, quietly, methodically, across the Indo-Pacific. It starts in Darwin, Australia, a fuel depot already operational at the Royal Australian Air Force Base. Joint US-Australian. Tested. Running. Then Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea.
As discussed, we're facing a profoundly consequential moment here in the Indo-Pacific and accordingly in the world.
In September 2025, Admiral Samuel Paparo, the commander of all U.S. forces in the Pacific, personally attended the groundbreaking of a new $400 million fuel storage facility capable of storing 70 million gallons. The U.S. ambassador called it one of the most consequential developments in our security partnership in the last 80 years. DLA Energy exists to provide America's warfighters with timely and reliable access to fuel, said Navy Rear Admiral George Bresnahan, the Defense Logistics Agency Energy Commander, during his South Pacific tour in late 2025. Maintaining a decentralized network of fuel support points enables our team to deliver global energy solutions for sustained operational readiness. Darwin, Port Moresby, and now Davao. Points. 1 arc. All positioned southeast of the first island chain, out of range of China's medium-range missile arsenal, but close enough to sustain American forces operating deep in the contested Western Pacific. Look at a map. Davao sits at the northern edge of the Celebes Sea. To its west is the Sulu Sea. Both of these are critical maritime choke points, transit corridors that connect the Pacific Ocean to the Indian Ocean, through which U.S. carrier strike groups regularly move. The strategic consideration of a forward-based refueling hub in the Gulf of Davao is a tactical realignment and quick access to the Sulu Sea and Celebes Sea, which are vital transient routes for commercial and military vessels, said Professor Chester Cabalza, founder of the International Development and Security Cooperation think tank in Manila. In plain language, a carrier strike group sailing from the Pacific toward the South China Sea passes directly by this region. Right now, it has to stop in Manila or Subic Bay to refuel, ports that sit dangerously close to the range of Chinese missiles. The Davao Depot changes that calculation entirely. Once activated, as USNI News reports, the Davao DFSP will enable U.S. naval vessels to receive fuel products at an alternative point away from the South China Sea, facing ports of Subic and Manila, which may be exposed in a potential conflict with China. Half of the fuel will be naval-grade F-76 for warships. The other half will be aviation-grade JP-5 for carrier-based aircraft. This is not logistics support for peacetime exercises. This is war readiness fuel, pre-positioned for a contingency. And in a war, that distinction matters enormously.
The greater risk to our security is the lack of a credible deterrence. These facilities will help allow the AFP to perform and to sustain its operations.
Not everyone in Manila sees this the same way. The armed forces of the Philippines welcomed the depot. Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad, the Philippine Navy's West Philippine Sea spokesman, was direct. The greater risk is to have no deterrence at all. So, we welcome these facilities, he said. These are Philippine facilities. Philippine-controlled facilities, he added. Citing the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, and the Visiting Forces Agreement as the legal framework. AFP Chief General Romeo Bronner echoed this at a maritime security symposium at Camp Aguinaldo. Maritime security is both a national duty and a shared responsibility, he said. But inside the Philippine Congress, the reaction was different. A CT Teachers Party List representative Antonio Tinio went directly for the jugular. This planned U.S. military oil depot is not about helping Filipinos. It is about securing fuel for U.S. warships and aircraft as part of Washington's forward-based refueling chain in the Western Pacific, Tinio said. It deepens our entanglement in great power rivalry and turns parts of Mindanao into a forward operating platform for war.
Well, ang usapin dito ay pagpapanagot sa Vice Presidente. So, yun ang dapat na focus natin.
He added, fuel depots are prime military targets. Building a U.S.-controlled refueling hub in the Davao Gulf effectively paints a bullseye on communities that simply want peace, jobs, and basic services. Tinio raised a point that is uncomfortable, but real. He pointed out that Filipino families were struggling with high fuel prices and an energy crisis, while the government appeared to be welcoming a massive fuel facility for a foreign military. Ginagawang bodega ng crudo para sa digma ang Davao, he said in Filipino. Davao is being turned into a crude warehouse for war. This tension between strategic deterrence and sovereign risk is not unique to the Philippines. It is the permanent condition of every small nation caught between great powers. And it has no clean answer. Beijing is watching. China has spent the last decade building the most sophisticated anti-access area denial network in military history. It is called A2AD, and its purpose is simple: to keep American forces so far from China's coastline that, in a conflict, the U.S. cannot intervene in time. At the center of this strategy is the missile. China's DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile, the so-called carrier killer, has a range of roughly 900 miles. Its DF-26 reaches further still, perhaps 2,500 miles. These weapons are designed to hold American carriers, bases, and fuel depots in the Philippines at risk. But Davao sits outside the reliable strike envelope of China's medium-range systems, just barely. The geography is not perfect, but it is better than Subic, better than Manila. And paired with Darwin and Port Moresby, it creates redundancy that A2AD was not designed to defeat. China's response, predictably, has been to accelerate its own maritime assertiveness. In March 2026 alone, a Chinese warship locked its fire control radar on a Philippine naval vessel near Sabina Shoal. Chinese Coast Guard ships fired flares directly at Philippine patrol aircraft over Panganiban Reef. Chinese maritime militia vessels harassed Filipino fishermen in waters the Philippines legally owns. The message from Beijing is consistent: this is our backyard. Back off. The message from Washington, written not in press releases but in contractor bids and fuel specifications, is equally clear: we are staying. We are fueling up. And we are not going anywhere. Wars, as every serious military historian will tell you, are won by logistics. Not by the fighter with the most courage, not by the general with the most brilliant plan. By the army that can keep its men fed, its tanks fueled, and its ammunition flowing, longer and better than the other side. Napoleon failed in Russia because he could not feed his army. Japan lost the Pacific War because American submarines cut its supply lines. The Wehrmacht ground to a halt in North Africa because of fuel. America knows this history. China knows it too. What Washington is building right now, quietly, methodically, through Defense Logistics Agency contractor bids and bilateral defense agreements, is not a forward base for aggression. It is a strategic guarantee. It is the infrastructure that says, even if China fires the first shot, we will still be operational a month later. Darwin, Port Moresby, Davao. 3 fuel depots. 3 points on a map. Each one is, by itself, a mundane logistics facility. Together, they represent something else entirely. They represent the conclusion, drawn in Washington after careful deliberation, that the most important military question of the next 20 years is not who has the most missiles, but who can keep fighting when the missiles run out. America's answer is us, because we will have the fuel. And the Philippines, whether every Filipino politician agrees or not, is at the center of that answer. Here is what we know. On March 31st, 2026, a government contractor notice appeared on a U.S. Defense Agency website. It asked for bids on a fuel depot in Davao del Sur. Most people never read it. Most people never will. But in that dry, bureaucratic document was a decision that will shape the South China Sea for decades. The U.S. Air Force can fly its F-22s to Basa Air Base. The U.S. Navy can sail its destroyers through the West Philippine Sea. The U.S. Army can run its exercises at Clark. But none of that power means anything if the fuel runs out on day 6 of a conflict. The Davao Depot is America's answer to that problem. It is unglamorous. It is unsexy. it will never trend on social media. But it may be the most important military decision the United States has made in the Indo-Pacific in years. Because in the end, wars are not won by the side with the best weapons. Wars are won by the side that can keep those weapons running. If you found this analysis valuable, share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion. What happens when the world's busiest trade highway turns into a naval chessboard? That's the question hanging heavy over Asia right now. In the latest jolt of breaking news, Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels have surged back into contested waters of the South China Sea, shadowing U.S. naval activity and circling flashpoints like Scarborough Shoal. One regional security official summed it up bluntly: "This is no longer signaling, this is positioning." And suddenly, Manila is on high alert, allies are dialing each other up, and the calm blue waters are starting to look dangerously crowded. Picture this for a second: a stretch of sea carrying nearly $3 trillion in global trade every year, now packed with destroyers, patrol ships, and combat aircraft flying too close for comfort. This isn't some distant maritime dispute, it's the route your fuel, food, electronics, and energy supplies travel through. Scarborough Shoal, just a short sail from the Philippine coast, has once again become ground zero, with China flexing power and the Philippines responding by tightening coordination with the United States and regional partners. One wrong move here doesn't just make headlines, it rewrites security equations. And that's why this moment hits different. This isn't about one patrol or one provocation, it's about who controls the rules of the sea. Beijing's deployments challenge freedom of navigation, test international law, and directly push back against U.S. presence in the Indo-Pacific. For the Philippines, it's an uncomfortable reminder that sovereignty isn't abstract. It's defended in real time, under real pressure. The South China Sea is no longer simmering in the background. It's boiling, and the world is watching to see who blinks first. All right, let's set the stage properly because none of this is random, and none of it started yesterday. The South China Sea has been contested for decades, long before today's headlines and warship movements. China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all lay overlapping claims to islands, reefs, and waters in this strategically priceless maritime zone. On paper, many of these claims are supposed to be governed by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which defines territorial waters, exclusive economic zones, and maritime rights. In reality, power politics often outweigh legal diagrams. What should be clear-cut lines on a map have turned into gray zones patrolled by coast guards, naval vessels, and surveillance aircraft.
What you see on the screen is a depiction of the South China Sea, and you see the red dashes around the perimeter of the South China Sea.
The tension exploded into legal warfare in 2016, when an international arbitral tribunal in The Hague delivered a landmark ruling in favor of the Philippines. The court decisively struck down China's sweeping 9-line claim, declaring it had no legal basis under UNCLOS. For Manila, the verdict was a diplomatic weapon, proof that international law was on its side. For Beijing, it was a red line. China rejected the ruling outright, calling it null and void, and has since acted as if it never existed. That legal standoff still defines today's confrontations. The Philippines cites the ruling in protests and speeches, while Chinese ships continue operating as if the map never changed. Layered on top of this is the constant presence of the United States Navy, which views the South China Sea not as a regional dispute, but as a global test case. Through regular freedom of navigation operations (FNOP), U.S. warships deliberately sail near contested features, including recent patrols close to Scarborough Shoal, to challenge what Washington calls excessive maritime claims. The message is old school but crystal clear: the seas stay open, no matter who tries to fence them off. As U.S. officials put it, these missions defend the right to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows. And every time an American ship shows up, Chinese vessels shadow it, turning the South China Sea into a high-stakes standoff where law, history, and raw power collide. Now here's where things get real, because this isn't just talk anymore, it's steel in the water and aircraft in the sky. Over the past few days, China has rolled out serious naval and air power into waters claimed by the Philippines. And the composition of these forces matters. Guided missile destroyers and frigates, not symbolic patrol boats, have been tracked operating close to sensitive areas, signaling high-end combat readiness rather than routine law enforcement presence. These platforms are built for air defense, anti-ship warfare, and long-range operations. Meaning, this deployment is designed to be seen, noted, and calculated by everyone watching the radar screens. Even more eye-catching is the aerial component. China has flown H-6 strategic bombers, aircraft capable of carrying YJ-12 supersonic anti-ship missiles with an estimated strike range of up to 500 kilometers. That's not defensive posturing, that's a clear reminder of reach. From those distances, major naval formations, ports, and sea lanes fall well within potential engagement zones. In simple terms, Beijing is quietly saying, we can hit far, and we can hit fast. Officially, China's Southern Theater Command is playing it cool. The patrols are described as routine, while Manila is accused of colluding with external forces, diplomatic shorthand for working too closely with the United States and its allies. According to Beijing, these deployments are meant to preserve peace and stability. It's a familiar script: assert dominance, deny escalation, blame the other side. Old playbook, new hardware. At the core, China's stated objective remains unchanged. Beijing insists it is defending territorial sovereignty and responding to what it calls provocations by rival claimants and outside powers meddling in regional affairs. But the scale and sophistication of the forces involved tell a deeper story. This isn't just about protecting claims. It's about shaping behavior, intimidating opponents, and setting red lines in real time. In the South China Sea, China isn't asking for attention anymore. It's commanding it. Washington didn't waste time responding, and it responded the way it always has, by showing up, staying visible, and refusing to blink. The U.S. Navy has surged Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers alongside littoral combat ships into waters near disputed shoals, reinforcing what officials call a persistent presence in the South China Sea. These aren't ceremonial sail-bys. Arleigh Burkes are among the most capable surface combatants afloat, packed with Aegis air defense systems, cruise missiles, and anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Their deployment sends a quiet but unmistakable signal. The U.S. is prepared to operate in contested waters and stay there. At the heart of this posture is freedom of navigation operations, a doctrine Washington treats almost like sacred tradition. U.S. officials stress that these operations are fully consistent with international law and not aimed at any single country, even if everyone knows who's being challenged. One Pentagon spokesperson cut straight through the noise, stating that China's maritime claims do not deter us. In plain terms, the message is simple and old school. No nation gets to rewrite the rules of the sea by force. But beneath the tough talk lies a very real danger. The South China Sea has already seen near misses, aggressive shadowing, and even collisions between Chinese vessels during high-speed maneuvers. Add American warships, Chinese destroyers, bombers overhead, and Coast Guard vessels weaving between them, and the margin for error shrinks fast. A misjudged turn, a misread radar contact, or an overly aggressive intercept could trigger a crisis no one actually planned for. That's the uncomfortable truth of the current U.S. posture. Deterrence keeps the peace until it doesn't. And in these crowded waters, where pride, power, and patrol routes collide, escalation doesn't need intent. It only needs one bad moment. For Manila, this isn't theory or great power abstraction. This is happening right off its coast, and the response has been sharp, public, and deliberate. The Philippine government has moved quickly on the diplomatic front, issuing official protests and lodging firm representations with the Chinese embassy over both Beijing's rhetoric and its expanding maritime presence. Philippine officials have pushed back hard against accusations of collusion, stressing that defending sovereign rights is not provocation. In statements from Malacanang and the Department of Foreign Affairs, the message is consistent. China's actions are being challenged on record, in writing, and through international channels. No quiet acceptance, no silent retreat. At sea, the posture has tightened. The Philippine Navy and Philippine Coast Guard have stepped up patrols across the West Philippine Sea, keeping a closer watch on contested areas and maintaining presence near sensitive features. While Manila knows it cannot match China ship for ship, visibility itself has become a form of resistance. Each patrol shows the same point: these waters are not abandoned, and sovereignty isn't surrendered just because the other side is bigger. Diplomatically, the Philippines is also playing the long game. Coordination with the United States remains central, especially through joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and operational planning under existing defense agreements. At the same time, Manila continues engaging ASEAN partners, pushing for unity, consultations, and a rules-based approach to maritime security. It's a careful balancing act, strengthening alliances without triggering outright escalation. The Philippine response is quiet but firm, cautious but unmistakable. Manila isn't pounding the table, but it isn't backing down either. In a region where silence can be mistaken for consent, the Philippines is making one thing clear: it's present, it's watching, and it intends to stand its ground. What's unfolding in the South China Sea doesn't stay neatly boxed inside national borders, it ripples across the entire region. For ASEAN, these tensions are a stress test of unity. Some member states are deeply uneasy about being dragged into a confrontation between major powers, preferring quiet diplomacy and strategic ambiguity. Others, especially claimant states, are increasingly vocal about the need to push back against coercive behavior before it becomes the new normal. The result is a familiar ASEAN dilemma: consensus versus credibility. Every flare-up exposes how hard it is to speak with one voice when national interests, threat perceptions, and economic ties to China all pull in different directions. The economic stakes raise the temperature even further. The South China Sea isn't just geopolitically sensitive, it's economically indispensable. These waters carry critical shipping lanes and energy routes that feed East Asian manufacturing hubs, fuel markets, and consumer supply chains. Any serious disruption, whether from military standoffs or heightened insurance risks, would ripple straight into ports, prices, and production lines. For economies built on just-in-time trade, even short-term instability can translate into long-term uncertainty. Then there's the most immediate danger: maritime safety. The sea is getting crowded, and not just with warships. Military vessels, Coast Guard cutters, and maritime militia are operating in close quarters, often at high speed and under political pressure. Each aggressive maneuver, each shadowing incident, raises the odds of an accident, and in this environment, accidents don't stay accidents for long. One collision, one misread intention, and the region could find itself in an escalatory spiral no one planned for, but everyone would have to deal with. In short, the South China Sea is becoming more than a dispute zone, it's a regional fault line. And the longer tensions simmer, the harder it becomes for ASEAN, markets, and mariners alike to pretend this is business as usual. At the core of all this naval muscle flexing is a much quieter battlefield, international law, and that fight may be the most consequential of all. The legal backbone of the South China Sea disputes is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Under UNCLOS, coastal states are granted clearly defined maritime entitlements, including territorial seas and exclusive economic zones extending up to 200 nautical miles. This framework is what anchors the Philippines' legal position in the West Philippine Sea. Manila argues that its claims aren't based on power or history, but on codified international law that most of the world recognizes and follows. In theory, UNCLOS is supposed to remove ambiguity. In practice, it's become the very thing being contested. China, however, plays by a different script. Beijing asserts historical rights that it argues predate UNCLOS and justify its extensive presence and deployments across much of the South China Sea. This interpretation has been widely challenged, especially after the 2016 arbitral ruling, but China continues to treat these claims as non-negotiable. From Beijing's perspective, patrols, exercises, and ship deployments are not violations. They are enforcement of long-held sovereignty. Law, in this view, bends to history and power. The United States cuts straight across that argument. Washington insists that freedom of navigation and overflight are protected under UNCLOS norms and customary international law, regardless of competing sovereignty claims. That's the legal logic behind U.S. freedom of navigation operations. They are not about ownership of reefs or shoals, but about preventing any single state from turning international waters into restricted zones. Every FONOP is a legal statement made with a warship. And that's the real tension. One side sees law as fixed rules, the other treats it as flexible history. Until those visions align or one clearly prevails, the South China Sea will remain not just a military standoff, but a legal one, fought ship by ship, patrol by patrol. When you strip away the press statements and naval posturing, what's left is a tense strategic equation, and none of the outcomes are guaranteed to stay tidy. One possible path is de-escalation, driven by sustained diplomacy, military hotlines, and confidence-building measures. This is the scenario everyone publicly claims to want: fewer risky maneuvers, clearer communication, and a return to managed competition. But let's be real, de-escalation in the South China Sea doesn't mean ships go home. It means tensions are contained, not resolved, and restraint becomes a daily operational choice rather than a permanent fix. The more likely near-term scenario is a prolonged standoff. Persistent patrols, shadowing operations, and shows of force continue, but without major incidents. Friction becomes normalized. Each side learns the other's habits, thresholds, and red lines. This kind of frozen confrontation feels stable on the surface, but it's exhausting, expensive, and inherently fragile. One political crisis elsewhere or one aggressive captain at sea can shatter the balance overnight. The most dangerous scenario is escalation, and the scary part is that it wouldn't have to be intentional. An unintended collision, an aircraft intercept gone wrong, or a misinterpreted radar lock could trigger rapid military responses before diplomacy has time to catch up. In an environment thick with nationalism and alliance commitments, even a minor incident can spiral faster than leaders can control. Complicating all of this is the accelerating technological edge. Advanced missile platforms, long-range strike systems, real-time surveillance drones, and networked sensors are compressing decision-making timelines. Commanders now see more, track faster, and react quicker, which sounds stabilizing, until it isn't. Speed reduces room for human judgment, and in contested waters, that can turn seconds into strategic consequences. Bottom line, the South China Sea isn't drifting toward resolution, it's hardening into a test of endurance, discipline, and crisis management. The danger isn't war by design, it's war by miscalculation, and history tells us that's often how the worst ones start. Zoom out for a second, and it's obvious the South China Sea isn't just about reefs and shoals anymore, it's a front line in the US. China strategic rivalry. Every patrol, every statement, every joint exercise feeds into a much larger contest over influence, credibility, and leadership in the Indo-Pacific. For Washington, presence equals commitment to allies, to international law, to an open maritime order. For Beijing, pushing back is about reshaping that order and proving it can no longer be dictated from outside the region. The result? Alliances are tightening, defense cooperation is deepening, and neutral ground is getting harder to find. Multilateral diplomacy is supposed to be the pressure valve, but progress has been painfully slow. UN platforms and related mechanisms offer space for dialogue, confidence building, and rule setting. Yet consensus remains elusive. Competing interests, economic dependencies, and strategic caution keep outcomes watered down. The long-discussed code of conduct in the South China Sea, for example, moves forward inch by inch, always discussed, never quite delivered. Still, these forums matter. In a crisis-prone environment, even slow diplomacy is better than silence. That's why dialogue, however imperfect, remains essential. Military deterrence may prevent immediate conflict, but only sustained diplomatic engagement and respect for international norms can prevent long-term instability. Hotlines, maritime communication protocols, and regular consultations don't solve sovereignty disputes, but they can stop misunderstandings from turning into flashpoints. In a region this tense, talking is not weakness, it's damage control. What we're witnessing now is a clear escalation in geopolitical intensity. China's expanded naval deployments, the United States' firm maritime posture, and the Philippines' heightened state of alert all point to a South China Sea that is more contested, more crowded, and more consequential than ever. This isn't a temporary spike, it's a new normal taking shape in real time. The risks are obvious and serious. Military operations intersect with strategic rivalry and unresolved legal claims, creating a volatile mix where miscalculation could carry regional, even global consequences. Trade routes, energy flows, alliance credibility, and international law are all on the line. When great power competition plays out at sea, the margin for error is dangerously thin. The path forward is narrow but clear. Stronger diplomacy, greater transparency, and consistent adherence to lawful maritime conduct are no longer optional. They're essential. The South China Sea has always been a crossroads of commerce and culture. Whether it becomes a corridor of cooperation or a theater of confrontation depends on the choices being made right now, while the ships are still maneuvering and the lines are not yet crossed. The South China Sea is a region of immense strategic and economic importance, harboring vast hydrocarbon reserves that could reshape energy dynamics in Southeast Asia. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the region contains an estimated 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas and 11 billion barrels of oil in probable reserves, with undiscovered reserves projected at an additional 160 trillion cubic feet of gas and 12 billion barrels of oil. These resources are primarily located along the sea's margins, with key areas like Reed Bank holding approximately 5 billion barrels of oil and 55 trillion cubic feet of gas. While countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia are advancing energy exploration projects in contested waters, the Philippines has been slower to capitalize on its resource potential due to a 2014 policy suspending exploration in disputed areas. However, with the Malampaya gas field nearing depletion, the Philippines is now ramping up efforts to revitalize its oil and gas sector through projects like redeveloping the Cadlao oil field and pursuing joint exploration ventures, signaling a renewed commitment to addressing energy security and rising costs.
As we renew Service Contract 38, we optimistically look forward to the continued production and utilization of the remaining reserves of the Malampaya gas field, as well as further exploration and development of its untapped potential.
The Philippines faces significant challenges in harnessing its vast hydrocarbon resources, primarily due to Chinese aggression in disputed waters. Despite a 2016 arbitral tribunal ruling under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS,